Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 25 based on novel. So let's start. An enormous mountain came smashing downwards from the sky, while numerous pillars of light shot out from the many caves on the mountain. The light pillars swiftly interweaved, directly forming a huge light array at the bottom of the mountain in an extremely short amount of time. It just so happened that Lindong was at the center of this light array. Bang! Yuan power boiled as the mountain brought the light array as it descended from the skies like a meteorite from space. It contained a shocking fluctuate that violently pushed down on Lindong. Crack! The mountain had yet to land, but the force from it had already penetrated downwards, striking the ground until numerous large cracks were formed. Even the land itself shuddered violently at this moment. The Tao sect disciples around the platform also hurriedly pulled back and made some distance. Their eyes were grave as they watched this scene. The fluctuation that was transmitted downwards from above allowed them to understand that if they were the ones doing battle, it was likely that they would have been suppressed until even movement would not be possible. That fellow does possess some ability, Mo Ling remarked in a heavy voice. No matter what, he is the most outstanding person amongst the younger generation of the Great Precipice Cave. The Great Precipice Cave is also considered a super sect. Hence, it can't be too weak. Ying Huan eyebrows knitted slightly as she said. I wonder if Lindong will use the Great Desolation scripture. I have never seen him use it ever since he successfully comprehended it. Mo Ling suddenly chuckled. His eyes were filled with anticipation and curiosity as he watched Lindong. That fellow has many hidden cards up his sleeve. If he is not forced into a dead end, I believe that he will not use the Great Desolation scripture. Therefore, it is likely that you are going to be disappointed this time. Ying Huan cocked her head and thought for a moment before replying in a lazy manner. It's fine. As long as we can send that fellow flying, it will be refreshing even if we are unable to see the Great Desolation scripture. Mo Ling laughed softly and said. Ying Huan also nodded in agreement when she heard this. Her light-colored eyebrows suddenly lifted as her eyes looked towards the battleground. At that spot, Lindong had already raised his head. His eyes were locked onto the enormous light array that was pushing down onto him. The Great Precipice Cave scripture, a powerful martial art indeed. The mountain light array rapidly magnified in Lindong's eyes. However, one could not see any panic on his face. Instead, a somewhat excited smile had surfaced. He quickly let out a deep breath while majestic Yuan power whistled out from his body like a flood. Yuan power screamed out as Lindong extended his hand. Soon after, the space above him rippled intensely. In the next instant, it was as though a dark black emptiness had appeared in the space. An ancient aura that signified great changes spread apart from the emptiness. Allow me to test just how powerful the Great Desolate Imprisoning Heavenly Hand activated by the Great Desolation scripture is. Lindong smiled slightly. His extended hand suddenly clenched and descended. Buzz buzz. The black emptiness immediately collapsed. After which, the ancient aura became even richer. There appeared to be some rustling footsteps from within the darkness. After which, a figure of light pierced through the darkness and appeared in the emptiness. The light figure was quite majestic and one could vaguely see the imposing silhouette of the figure. An indescribable aura emerged from the emptiness. Under this aura, even Chen Zhen and the others had a vague change in their expressions. That is, the Great Desolate Emperor? Chen Zhen spoke softly. He was somewhat startled as he looked at the light figure that had appeared within the emptiness. Yes. Wu Dao nodded with a serious face. The both of them were aware that Lindong practiced the Great Desolate Imprisoning Heavenly Hand. It was a martial art created by a peak practitioner from ancient times. However, they did not expect Lindong's mastery of the martial art to have reached such a level. That light figure was no longer an ordinary martial art soul. It could already be considered an incomplete avatar of the Great Desolate Emperor. Although it was merely an incomplete avatar, its might could already be described as terrifying. The ability to form an incomplete avatar of the martial arts creator was something that even Chen Zhen and Wu Dao did not have. This was because it required some extremely unique techniques. The reason Lin Dong was able to do it was clearly related to the Great Desolation scripture. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand. The light figure surfaced from within the emptiness, while a cold and stern expression flashed in Lin Dong's eyes. After which, his low and deep voice resounded within his heart. At the same time, his palm faced upwards and grabbed in that direction. The moment Lin Dong's palm grabbed upwards, the light figure with the empty space also raised its hand and lightly grabbed at the mountain light array that came pressing downwards. Bang! Although the action of the light figure was light and effortless, the moment its hand moved, the air within 100 feet radius appeared to suffer from a powerful pressure, as it rapidly fled. The light that permeated the sky surged and a giant ancient hand 100 feet large was directly formed above Lin Dong's head. The enormous hand was covered in the wrinkles of time. They extended outwards like obscure and mysterious symbols that were filled with a shocking strength. Rumble. The enormous palm faced upwards and collided heavily against the mountain light array that came pressing downwards in front of the many gazes present. A frightening energy ripple whizzed and spread outwards when these two enormous objects collided. It was as though even space itself was slightly distorted. Lin Dong lifted his head. His eyes were tightly fixed onto the wild and violent fluctuations that were spreading across the sky in an uncontrolled manner. This stalemate caused a cold glint to flash across his eyes. Humph! The moment the cold glint flashed across Lin Dong's eyes, the light figure within the emptiness seemed to emit an extremely old and ancient snort that arrived from ancient times. After which, the light figure once again raised its hand and clenched it across the space. When the hand clenched, everyone could see that the space before it became greatly distorted. Soon after, the mountain light array actually emitted an intense cracking sound. Numerous large cracks swiftly spread across the mountain. Nearby, when Huzhen saw this scene, his expression changed drastically, as he hastily urged the Yuan power in his body in an attempt to stabilize the mountain. However, it appeared as though there was nothing that could block the palm of the light figure. His stubborn resistance was completely useless. All he could do was watch as an increasing number of large cracks appeared on the mountain. Shatter! The cracked mountain was reflected in Lin Dong's eyes. Soon after, a soft voice slowly echoed from his mouth. Bang! As Lin Dong's voice emerged, the large ancient hand suddenly clenched tightly. A frightening force poured out from it, and the mountain light array was finally unable to endure any long. With a loud bang, it completely exploded. Gulk! The mountain exploded, while the nearby Huoshan was immediately affected, and he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Immediately, a cold glint surged within his eyes. His body swiftly pulled back unwillingly. Swoosh! However, just as his body was about to pull back, a green light rushed out from the wild and violent fluctuations in front of him. In a flash, it appeared in front of him. Swoosh swoosh! Huozhen did not panic at all when he saw Lin Dong rushing over once again. His spear jerked and a sharp aura pierced towards the fatal spots around Lin Dong's body. Lin Dong's eyes were a little indifferent as he watched Huozhen continue to resist stubbornly. His body moved and appeared on the latter's left. He clenched his hand as an enormous black tree trunk flashed and appeared. The twigs on the tree trunk appeared to be made of metal and were ice cold and strong. Get lost! Lin Dong lifted the black tree trunk and swung it violently. It slammed heavily onto Huozhen's body in an unceremonious manner. Boom! A low and deep sound echoed. Huozhen's body was akin to a cannonball as it shot backwards. Finally, it landed heavily on the ground. Cracks spread under his body, while he involuntarily spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. You have lost. Lin Dong slowly landed at Huozhen's side and spoke while wearing a faint smile. Huozhen's expression at this moment was a little terrifying. His eyes were venomous and cold as he stared at Lin Dong. He lowered his head slightly. However, the moment his head was lowered, his sleeves jerked and a sharp cold light shot out explosively towards Lin Dong's throat. Bang! A black twig intercepted the cold light, directly blocking it, while Lin Dong's eyes narrowed. On the ground, Huozhen suddenly felt a bone-piercing killing intent from Lin Dong's body when he launched his sneak attack. His expression immediately changed. He wanted to speak, but before his voice could emerge, the black tree trunk had once again swung over violently. This time, it was headed towards his head. Huoshen was clearly a little frightened by this vicious act of Lin Dong. He did not expect that his earlier action would actually cause Lin Dong to truly unleash a murderous strike. He, who did not understand Lin Dong, was naturally unaware that this opponent of his was not some virtuous soul who had spent all his life in the sect. What impudence! However, when Lin Dong's tree trunk was swung out, the expression of one of the grey-cloaked elders from the Great Precipice Cave changed. His body moved and he directly appeared in front of Huoshen. With a wave of his sleeve, he deflected the swinging tree trunk. After which, his finger jabbed at Lin Dong. Swoosh! Just as the finger moved, an old figure appeared in front of Lin Dong. A palm swung out and a majestic force directly caused the grey-cloaked old man to take a step back. Chen Zhen, who had forced back the grey-cloaked old man, stood in front of Lin Dong and spoke out in an indifferent voice. Elder Zheng, I'm afraid that it is not up to you to teach the disciple of my Dao sect a lesson, no. The change in the arena occurred in a split second. The intervention of Chen Zhen and the grey-cloaked elder from the Great Precipice Cave also caused everyone to be startled. Chen Zhen stood in front of Lin Dong. He was a little displeased as he looked at the grey-cloaked elder. This place was after all their Dao sect territory. This action by the latter was as though he had turned from guest to host. Hall Chief Chen Zhen. This is merely a sparring match. Isn't your Dao sect disciple a little too ruthless? The grey-cloaked elder stared icily at Lin Dong before speaking. Fists and legs do not have eyes. It is only ordinary for one to be hurt when sparring. Moreover, Lin Dong has given Huoshen a chance to admit defeat earlier. However, the latter still launched a sneak attack. This act, perhaps Elder Zheng will have to teach properly in the future. Chen Zhen spoke indifferently. The grey-cloaked elder's expression immediately turned dark and volatile when he heard this, as fury surged within his eyes. However, he was aware of where this place was. Although their Great Precipice Cave was also a super sect, it clearly could not compare to the Dao sect. At this moment, he could only suppress the fury within him. He waved his sleeve and a number of Great Precipice Cave disciples hurriedly came forward and supported Huoshen away. The Dao sect is indeed worthy of being one of the 8 super sects. My Great Precipice Cave admits defeat in this sparring match. If we have the opportunity next year, we will definitely come again for a mountain challenge. The mood of the grey-cloaked elder was clearly extremely terrible after the sparring had ended in defeat. He no longer had any thoughts of continuing to stay. All he did was cup his hands together towards Chen Zhen and speak some superficial polite words. After which, he turned around and led the Great Precipice Cave disciples to leave in a dispirited manner. Their manner was completely different from the arrogance they had when they arrived. Lin Dong watched the dejected group from the Great Precipice Cave and involuntarily shrugged. He was just about to speak when waves of cheers erupted from all around. Little fellow, you got to show off again. Chen Zhen watched the excited Dao sect disciples, and could not help but turn his head to commend Lin Dong. You have done well this time around. Those fellows from the Great Precipice Cave keep trying to find some loophole and gain an advantage. This time around, they had come to issue a mountain challenge when the outstanding disciples of our 4 halls were undertaking a retreat. If you had not intervened, it is likely that they would really have succeeded today. Such tricks are hardly useful. Lin Dong shook his head. The reputation of a sect was not fought for through such tactics. These words might be true, but if news were to spread, it will ultimately not be good for the reputation of our Dao sect. Chen Zhen nodded. His eyes swept across Lin Dong's body as he smilingly said, it will soon be the hall competition. Xiao Xiao, Qing Yi, Mu Li and the rest are all making full use of the time to undertake a retreat. On the other hand, you are the most laid back. Now that you have obtained the Great Desolation Scripture, I will not simply let you off if you fail to obtain a good result during the whole competition. It is merely an empty title. Does Teacher Uncle care about it this much? Lin Dong grinned as he asked. What nonsense! I have waited for so many years for the Great Desolation Scripture to appear. My desolate hall finally has the chance to turn things around. How can I easily let it go? Chen smilingly chided. I will do my best. Senior sister Xiao Xiao and the others are not easy to deal with. Lindong said. I? Chen nodded. He spoke a little longer with Lindong before leaving with Wu Dao in a proud manner. One could tell that Lindong's act of defeating the Great Precipice Cave this time around had given them some face. After all, Lindong was a disciple of their desolate hall. After Chen and Wu Dao left, the surrounding Dao sect disciples immediately surged over like a flood. Their passionate eyes caused Lindong to have goosebumps. Hey, thanks. A delicate hand from the crowd patted Lindong's shoulder. The latter turned his head around and saw the young lady, who had once again tied her scattered black hair into a black ponytail. Ying Huan was smiling as she stared at Lindong. Her large eyes did indeed contain some gratitude. If Lindong had not intervened this time, it was likely that she would have to face Hushan. From the strength that the latter had displayed, it appeared that she would only have a 50% chance of victory even if she used all her strength. Given her character, there was no telling just how terrible she would feel should she end up losing and damaging the reputation of the Dao sect. I am also a disciple of the Dao sect. Lindong laughed softly. Ying Huan's large eyes glanced at him. For some unknown reason, she was a little unsatisfied by this reply. After hesitating for a while, she said, on the account that your performance is quite good, I shall remind you in a friendly manner that Qing Yi and Mu Li are currently attempting to reach the 9-yuan nirvana stage. If they succeed, it is likely that the difficulty of raising the ranking of the desolate hall during this whole competition will increase greatly. Lindong was momentarily startled. Immediately, he smiled and nodded. Qing Yi and Mu Li were the strongest disciples of the Earth Hall and Flood Hall respectively. It was not surprising that they possessed the qualifications to attempt the 9-yuan nirvana stage. After Ying Huan gave this reminder to Lindong, she swung her ponytail, turned around and left without any hesitation. Her beautiful turning figure attracted quite a number of gazes from the surrounding Dao sect disciples. Lindong watched Ying Huan's free and easy figure and also smiled. He cupped his hands towards the surrounding Dao sect disciples before leaving with Mo Ling. In the following days, the matter of Lindong defeating the Great Precipice Cave swiftly spread within the Dao sect. This caused quite a big commotion again. However, almost all the Dao sect disciples felt that they had a sense of release. After all, the Great Precipice Cave disciples had acted quite haughtily when they arrived, causing one to feel furious just by looking at them. In such a situation, Lindong had intervened in the end, turning the situation around and foiling the Great Precipice Cave's plans. This undoubtedly caused many Dao sect disciples to issue continuous praises, and some worshipping cries even appeared amongst the four halls. Without realizing it, Lindong's reputation amongst the Dao sect's disciples gradually soared. It even showed signs of being almost comparable to Ying Xiao, Qing Yi and Mu Li, who were top disciples with great experience. At this moment, it was likely that no one would think that Lindong was inexperienced and lacking reputation. Furthermore, no one would think of him as a new disciple who had joined the Dao sect for less than a year. Lindong relied on his own ability to completely obtain a stable footing in the Dao sect, which was overflowing with talent. After the mountain challenge, Lindong's days once again returned to normal. As these dull and ordinary days passed, the day of the whole competition approached. The atmosphere within the entire Dao sect grew increasingly explosive. All the disciples were rubbing their hands together and waiting for the greatest event of the year. A young man was seated on a rock that protruded from the edge of a mountain within the Dao sect. An enormous platform lay below. There were quite a number of Dao sect disciples gathered there to train and spar, and the atmosphere was rather lively. Lindong's eyes were a little absent-minded as he quietly watched the platform. Almost a year had passed since he arrived at the Dao sect. He wondered how his family was now. It was likely that what his achievements should guarantee a stable and peaceful life for his father and the rest in the Great Yang Empire. Qing Tan. I wonder how that girl is doing. Lindong's thoughts changed and a beautiful and adorable oval-faced girl surfaced in his mind, as the corners of Lindong's mouth involuntarily lifted to form an extremely gentle arc. Smiling in such a manner, what are you thinking about? While Lin Dong was submerged in his memory, a lovely laughter suddenly appeared. At the same time, it also caused him to recover his senses. He turned and saw Ying Huan in a light-colored clothes standing elegantly by his side. At this moment, Ying Huan had turned her head slightly to watch Lin Dong. Sunlight penetrated through the tree branches and scattered downwards, causing the originally bright and beautiful large eyes of the young lady to be dyed in a gentle light, making her appear extremely beautiful. I was thinking about the bet between us. Lin Dong lazily stretched as he teasingly said. Ying Huan, who had originally wanted to make fun of Lin Dong, immediately rotated her large eyes upon hearing these words. Her foot had also stealthily taken a step back. It looks like someone really intends to feign ignorance and go back on her words. Lin Dong smiled slightly and said. Ying Huan's face turned red. She immediately gritted her silver teeth and said, "Who is going back on her words? This lady shall clear all the debts between us today. Tell me, what do you want me to do?" As he gazed at the expression on Ying Huan's face that had decided to throw caution to the wind, Lin Dong felt like laughing. However, he endured it. He did not have anything to do. Hence, his gaze began to slowly sweep over Ying Huan's exquisite and lovely figure. Ying Huan's pretty face gradually turned red under the fearless manner in which Lin Dong swept his eyes over her. It was due to embarrassment. However, this young lady, who was filled with weird thoughts, was not an ordinary person. After her face reddened for a moment, her large eyes suddenly narrowed like a cat. Immediately, she extended her hand and a dark golden jade talisman appeared. Her delicate finger played with the jade. After which, Ying Huan revealed an enchanting smile to Lin Dong. This thing is able to transmit whatever is spoken here to my father. Therefore, you should be careful when you speak. Lin Dong's expression froze for a moment. After which, he viciously said, "You are really ruthless." Although Lin Dong was seldom afraid of anything, he still had some respect and fear towards the Dao sect master, who was also currently one of the top experts in the Eastern Xian region. Therefore, even with his character, he would not do something as bold as tease that person's daughter in front of him. Ying Huan watched Lin Dong shrink back. Only then did she triumphantly wave the jade in her hand and kept it. Lin Dong helplessly turned his head around. He cast his gaze towards the platform below. Soon after, he sniffed a fragrant wind. When he turned his head around, he saw that Ying Huan had already sat down beside him. She gently waved her hand and the emerald zither appeared with a flash. ****, so as to stop you from saying that I do not keep my word, I shall play a song for you. Other than father and big sis, no one in the Dao sect has such a privilege." The young lady tilted her head, stared at Lin Dong and said with a gentle smile. Lin Dong was startled for a moment. He was just about to speak when the young lady's flawless and delicate hand landed on the zither. A moment later, a gentle sound akin to the sounds of nature slowly spread. The many techniques that Ying Huan had practiced were all sonic wave attacks. Hence, her playing of the zither had already reached the pinnacle. Moreover, her zither music had some strange fluctuations accompanying it. It appeared to be able to penetrate into one's mind bit by bit and settle in the deepest part of one's soul. Lin Dong's eyes could not help but slowly shut when this melodious zither music was heard. His originally tensed body had also completely relaxed at this moment. At this moment, the defenses all over his body was likely at its weakest throughout his many years of training. Ying Huan occasionally tilted her head a little and watched the young man, who had now fallen into a deep sleep and lost all of his defenses. A gentleness flashed across her pretty eyes. In that mountain crevice, she had become aware of how cautiously this man treated the world. This was the first time she had seen him sleep deeply and relax like a child. This kind of feeling was quite good. The young lady smiled slightly. Ying Huan sensed it when Lin Dong suddenly woke up from his defenseless deep sleep. The former's body once again became tense in an instant. All the defenses and cautiousness also suddenly returned. Lin Dong stretched lazily, as a refreshing feeling scattered from within his body. He had not felt like this for many years. "Thanks." Lin Dong turned his head around. He looked at the young lady, who had gently placed the emerald zither on her leg. At this moment, she was smiling sweetly. Her smile was clear and bright, and seemed to be able to purify a person. A mountain, a green rock, a young lady, a zither. Lin Dong's eyes gently drooped as he captured this beautiful scene in his heart. He was aware that he might forget many things in the future. However, regardless of what happened, this scene before him would be clearly remembered by him in his heart. Although my song has an enchanting effect, it will have no effect if you have the intention of defending against it. Ying Huan laughed. After her voice faded, Ying Huan hugged the zither and stood up unsteadily. She gently stretched her waist. She completely displayed her soft figure and was just about to speak when a disturbance emerged from the platform below. Immediately, her light-colored eyebrows knitted together. Her gaze followed the source of the disturbance and glanced over. Soon after, Lin Dong saw the young lady's face suddenly turn grave. Within the gaze was a slight trace of worry. Lin Dong was stunned for a moment due to the change in Ying Huan's expression. After which, his also turned to the source of the disturbance. There were at least 1,000 figures atop the gigantic platform. At this moment, every gaze was cast in the same direction. Every gaze was filled with amazement as whispers spread rapidly across the platform like the plague. The spot where all the gazes had gathered at was a set of stone steps that led to the platform. On the stone steps was a figure who was slowly walking towards the platform. This figure was the cause of the disturbance on the platform. That is. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he stared at the figure that was slowly walking on the stone steps. By relying on his outstanding eyesight, he could see a person dressed in grey robes, with messy long hair draped behind him. Moreover, the most eye-catching feature was the black greatsword on his back. The greatsword was roughly 3 meters long. Faintly, an astonishing yet sinister fluctuation radiated from the sword. Although the grey-robed figure was not considered handsome, he was decent to look at. However, the gaze below his hair appeared to be filled with numbing indifference, and his dark and gloomy eyes caused one's heart to tremble when they saw it. Furthermore, what made Lin Dong's expression turn grave was the extremely rich sense of danger emitted from grey-robed figure's body. This was a feeling that would only appear when two vicious wolves, which had experienced hundreds of battles, faced each other on the prairie. Amongst all of the Dao sect disciples, even Ying Xiaoxiao could not give Lin Dong such a feeling. However, the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar grey-robed man caused Lin Dong's pupils to harden. "Who is he?" asked Lin Dong in a soft voice. He did not recall such a dangerous figure amongst the Dao sect disciples. "Wang Yang," replied Ying Huan as she gently bit her lips. Her originally clear and pleasing voice had turned somewhat gloomy at this moment. "What's the matter?" asked Lin Dong as his eyes narrowed slightly. This was the first time he had seen such an expression from her. Ying Huan grew quiet for a while before replying in a soft voice, "Do you still remember what I told you about the previous Great Sect competition? The incident when our senior sister from Sky Hall was killed by Yuan Gate?" "Yes. That senior sister is Wang Yang's older sister." Ying Huan clenched her jade-like hands and said after taking a deep breath. "At that time, senior brother Wang Yang was also a disciple of our Sky Hall. Moreover, in terms of seniority, he is more experienced than Big Sis. If we were to compare, he would be the person with the highest seniority amongst the Dao sect younger generation members. After that incident, senior brother Wang Yang was dealt a great blow, causing his character to change drastically. On top of that, for the sake of the entire sect, my father had forcefully suppressed the rage and the call for vengeance. At that time, as anger and revenge had overwhelmed his reasoning, senior brother Wang Yang rushed into the Great Hall, pointed at my father and scolded uncontrollably. After which, senior brother Wang Yang stayed in the Dao sect for half a year before he left. In the past few years, we would occasionally hear some news about him. It is said that he has killed many members of Yuan Gate. This has caused Yuan Gate to finally list him on the sect's wanted list. Furthermore, senior brother Wang Yang is ranked second on the sect's wanted list." Lin Dong's pupils faintly contracted for a while. Only after hearing her words, could he truly feel the viciousness and valiantness of senior brother Wang Yang, whom he had yet to meet. He had previously crossed blows with Yao Ling, hence, he knew how difficult those criminals were. However, Yao Ling was only ranked 4th, while senior brother Wang Yang was actually 2 ranks higher than him. In response to Yuan Gate's actions, our Dao sect has secretly aided senior brother Wang. However, he might not know about it. Ying Huan pursed her lips and seemed slightly sad as she said in a soft voice, "Really, such matters can't be blamed on father." Lin Dong remained silent and nodded his head. Ying Xuanzi was the sect master of a super sect. Every decision he made would affect the life and death of countless Dao sect members. Although Lin Dong had yet to witness the scale of a battle between 2 super sect, he was able to surmise that it would definitely be earth-shattering. Furthermore, the number of deaths would be extremely terrifying. When senior Ju Tong fell into the hands of Yuan Gate, he was Ying Xuanzi's favorite disciple, and was perhaps even treated as a son by the latter. One could only imagine the pain and suffering in his heart, as he forcefully suppressed the anger within his sect. For the past few years, senior brother Wang Yang has never returned to Dao sect. Ying Huan tightly clenched her jade-like hands and tilted her head to stare at Lin Dong. The charming glint that was previously present was no longer there. Instead, it was replaced with unease. However, he has now returned. Lin Dong frowned deeply. His eyes flickered for a moment, before he suddenly spoke. "Is it because of the whole competition?" "Perhaps, it might be what comes after the whole competition, the Great Sect competition." Ying Huan replied somewhat bitterly. "The champion of the whole competition will become the commander of all the participating disciples from Dao sect in the upcoming Great Sect competition. Senior brother Wang Yang might have returned this time because he wants to borrow the strength of Dao sect to take revenge on Yuan Gate during the Great Sect competition." Lin Dong sighed deeply. "This fellow, senior brother Wang Yang, is prejudiced and stubborn. If we follow his lead, it would definitely lead to the death of more disciples," Ying Huan said. As such a conclusion crossed her mind, Ying Huan looked as if she was about to cry. This was the first time Lin Dong had seen this lively yet deeply stubborn young lady reveal such an expression. Seeing her expression, Lin Dong fell silent. He had only been a disciple of Dao sect for a short period of time, and there were many things he was not aware of. Therefore, after the sudden appearance of senior brother Wang Yang, even he felt a little unprepared. There's no need to worry too much about it. Maybe senior brother Wang Yang returned this time without such thoughts in mind. Lin Dong consoled after softly sighing. Right now, the only thing he could do was to console her. "I want to see him. Will you accompany me?" Ying Huan said as she looked at Lin Dong. Lin Dong could see a trace of rarely seen timidness in her big eyes. It seemed like she was actually a little afraid of senior brother Wang Yang. "Let's go." At this moment, there was no longer anything for Lin Dong to say as he nodded his head. This sudden matter caused his heart to feel somewhat heavy. After all, if such a matter was not managed well, it would result in a war between 2 super sects. After seeing Lin Dong nod his head, a trace of gratefulness flashed past Ying Huan's eyes. She proceeded to twist her lovely body and shot forward, while Lin Dong closely followed behind. On the platform, the grey-robed male carrying a great sword with hair draped over his shoulders finally walked to the top of the stone stairs. The original clamor that was present on the platform instantly disappeared as everyone stared at the familiar yet foreign figure. The man's numb and indifferent gaze swept past the bodies of the Dao sect disciples. There was not much fluctuation within them as this happened. He proceeded to raise his leg again and walked forward with a speed that was neither hurried nor slow. As he walked forward, the crowd on the platform immediately split apart to form a path for him. A few experienced disciples watched the man with their mouths ajar and complicated expressions on their faces. Upon seeing this, a few newer Dao sect disciples wanted to speak out. However, their mouths were immediately covered by their senior brothers and sisters standing next to them. The grey-robed man seemingly did not notice the weird atmosphere as he continued to walk along the path. After quite a while, his footsteps finally came to a stop as he looked at a slender and elegant young lady in front of him. At this moment, a small light gathered in his numb eyes. "You Huan, you have actually grown up to be so beautiful." The grey-robed man stared at the young lady before him. His almost emotionless face seemed to twitch for a moment. However, in the end, a smile did not appear. Instead, an exceptionally rough voice slowly emerged from his mouth. The young lady walked up as her large eyes gazed upon the grey-robed man's face, which was covered in stubbles and scars. She could not resist but feel a sour feeling at the tip of her nose. She was somewhat unable to imagine how a person, who was so bright and brilliant like the sun and a big brother to them all in the past, could turn into this. Senior brother Wang Yang, you finally returned. Big sis and I really missed you. Ying Huan replied with a forced smile, while trying to resist the sour feeling on the tip of her nose. The grey-robed man looked towards the young girl for a moment, before shaking his head. You have been very intelligent since young. You should know why I've returned. Tell Xiao Xiao that I will show no mercy during the whole competition. The grey-robed man's rough and cold voice slowly descended, before he reached out his hand, seemingly wanting to pat Ying Huan's shoulders. However, he suddenly stopped and gently withdrew his hand, before he walked past the young girl. Ying Huan's eyes immediately turned red. Upon seeing this, Lin Dong softly sighed before finally walking out. Under the complex gazes on the platform, he finally stopped in front of the grey-robed man. This video will end here.